Have you ever wondered what the very first song on Earth was? Here's a hint. It wasn't made by a person, and it wasn't played on an instrument. It was actually made by the planet itself. Today, we're going to dive into the incredible, ancient connection between music and the natural world.
So here's our journey. We'll start by listening in on the planet's very first songs. Then we'll see how humans got inspired to make their own instruments. After that, we'll explore how things like weather and the seasons act like a blueprint for composers, get into the cool science of wild sound, and finally, we'll find out why listening to nature is actually super important for all of us.
All right, let's kick things off with the planet's first songs. You know, long before any person was around to even hear it, the Earth was basically a giant, non-stop concert hall.
So, seriously, what was that first song? If you're picturing a caveman humming a tune, you gotta think way, way further back. The first music on this planet had absolutely nothing to do with people.
Meet the planet's original musicians, the elements and the animals. Just stop and think about it for a second. The sound of wind rushing through trees is basically a flute solo. Ocean waves hitting the shore create this steady, powerful beat. And then you have animals, like birds and whales, performing these incredibly complex melodies. These were the very first rhythms our ancestors ever heard, and it's how they started to understand what music even was.
And you know what's wild? This natural music isn't just a bunch of random noise. It's surprisingly organized. Scientists have found out that some songbirds actually practice their tunes and even use musical scales, kind of like we do. It's a real orchestra out there, and every creature has its own part to play.
So after listening to nature's concert for thousands and thousands of years, humans decided, hey, I want to join in. And this is where things get really interesting, because we started making our own music using everything we could find around us.
It all started out pretty simple. I mean, the first instruments weren't made in a factory. They were just found. Imagine stumbling across a hollow log, picking up a stick, and realizing that when you hit it, you create this deep, booming rhythm. That was pretty much the birth of percussion coming straight out of the forest.
But of course, it didn't just stop with logs. People got unbelievably creative with their natural toolkit. They'd carve reeds from the riverbank to make flutes, stretch animal hides to create the first drums, or even put dried seeds inside a gourd to make a shaker. Every single instrument was literally a piece of the earth.
Okay, so people were using natural materials for their instruments. But the connection goes even deeper than that. Now we're going to see how the big patterns of nature, like the weather and the changing seasons, became the inspiration for what to play.
You can almost think of composers as painters who use sound instead of color. A massive thunderstorm might inspire them to use loud, crashing drums and intense horns to capture all that crazy energy. But on the flip side, a gentle rain might be represented by soft, repeating piano notes that create a feeling of total calm. They're literally mirroring the mood of the sky.
The whole cycle of the seasons gives composers a perfect structure for telling a story. Spring feels like a fresh start, right? So the music is often fast and full of energy. Summer is loud and intense. Autumn music tends to get a little more mellow and thoughtful. And winter? Well, winter music often uses quiet moments and even silence to capture that feeling of a still, snowy landscape. It's a natural rhythm that we all just kind of get.
Okay, let's geek out a little bit and get into the science of all this. We've talked about what nature's music sounds like and how it inspires us. Now, let's explore the actual physics of how these sounds work out in the wild.
Here's a really key idea. The sounds you hear in any environment aren't there by accident. A beach sounds totally different from a forest, which sounds completely different from a mountain valley. Every single place has its own unique acoustic fingerprint that tells you a story about what lives there and even how healthy it is.
And there's a technical name for this. It's called a soundscape. Think of it like a sound selfie for a specific location. It's the combination of every single sound happening there. Scientists actually record these, and if a forest suddenly gets too quiet, it can be a major warning sign that the local wildlife is in trouble. This means a soundscape is both a piece of art and a vital piece of scientific data.
So how do we even hear all this? Well, sound waves travel through the air at about 1,125 feet per second. To put that into perspective, that's way faster than a Formula One race car at top speed. It's basically the speed limit for every sound you hear, from a tiny whisper to a huge thunderclap.
But where that sound is traveling makes a huge difference. See, nature isn't just a musician, it's also the concert hall. In a canyon, the hard rock walls reflect sound waves, creating these massive echoes. It's like a natural amphitheater. But in a forest, the trees and soft leaves absorb the sound, making everything feel much closer,
softer, and more intimate. The environment itself is shaping the music. And that brings us to our last and maybe most important section. Why does any of this matter to you and me? Well, the answer is pretty simple. Listening to nature's playlist is actually incredibly good for us.
And this isn't just a nice idea. These effects are scientifically proven. Listening to natural sounds can seriously reduce your stress, boost your mood, help you sleep better, and even increase your focus. Our brains are basically hardwired to find comfort in these organic, non-threatening patterns. It's the whole reason why hospitals play nature sounds to help patients relax, and why so many of us use rain apps to fall asleep at night.
This leads to a really big idea. When we talk about protecting the environment, we're not just saving trees and animals. We're also saving its music. Places like national parks are more than just pretty scenery. They're like huge libraries of sound that we need to preserve, both for our own well-being and for the inspiration of future musicians.
And this quote pretty much sums it all up, doesn't it? You don't need expensive tickets or a fancy stereo to hear the world's greatest music. It's free, it's powerful, and it's happening right outside your door. All you have to do is take a moment to listen. So, I'll leave you with a question to think about. Sometime today, just stop for a minute and really listen. What does the soundtrack of your world actually sound like? Is it birds, the wind, traffic? Paying attention to your own personal soundscape is a way to connect with the oldest musical tradition on Earth. So, what story is your environment telling you?